Welcome to the Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show we'll have a talk about a Linux project, such as a Linux distribution, a desktop environment or application. We also have a chat about news or any variety of topics from the community. Anything that is Linux, tech, and open source is on the table for discussion. I'm Nate, a Linux fitness and vintage tech enthusiast with an almost unhealthy obsession with the openSUSE project. And with me today, I have Jinda, Adam Grubbs, Mark, Eric Adams. How is everybody?
Excellent.
Are we good?
Fine.
Doing well. How are you, Nate?
I couldn't be better. I guess it could be. Well, I don't know. Well, if I were better, would it really matter? I mean, I'm with you guys, so this is kind of like, this is as good as it gets, I guess.
It's relative. The pendulum swings, right?
That's true, yeah.
Some good, some bad.
I mean, I guess when I think about it, yeah, things could be a little better, like warmer outside maybe. But I mean, I live in Michigan, so you have to expect 9 months of misery for the 3 months of excellence, right?
It's true.
More reason to have decorations on the wall in your house, I guess. Well, Colin won't be here this week. He's away. He's leading a pack of wallabies to his new compound. So congratulate him on that. On the docket for today, we're going to first start with what we've been doing in Linux or tech. Do a CentOS distro exploration, check what's on the menu for next week, and then do our last call. So if you have not yet done the StrawPoll, before we get to that, there it should be in the chat if it's not already.
I can put it again.
Got it.
Oh, show off.
Yep, I beat you to it. How is CentOS exploration going for you? So if you have been playing around with CentOS, or even if you haven't, you can let me know in that straw poll, and we'll get to it later. All right.
Is it too late? Did I do it now?
Yeah. No,
is it too late?
No, it's not. It's never too late. You can just.
Okay, I'll download it right now then.
Yeah, you'll be fine. I'm sure I have no problems installing it.
None whatsoever.
Make sure you have VirtualBox. All right. Well, I had someone lined up for the what we've been doing in Linux and tech, but they weren't here. They're not here. So, does anybody else have anything they've been working on? They're really excited to talk about. I'm sure, Mark, you got something, don't you? You're always working on something interesting.
Oh, he looks down. He's digging.
No.
Well,
I was doing work stuff today, and that's not interesting for this conversation.
Okay.
It is all on Linux, though. Oh, you know what? I tried Neovim in the last week. I've never tried it before.
And what did you think of it?
I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Dude, I love Neovim.
So what is it about? What is it about Neovim that you like?
Plugin systems?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I thought you were talking. Yeah, talk to him. He's more important.
Okay.
There was some feature that I saw with Neovim, and I said, "Oh, that would be really nice to have. Let me download it, use it." And I don't know. It may have been something at the very bottom of the bottom of Neovim. I mean, the plugins and the various configurations. A lot of that you could get if you could get with Vim previously of various like syntax highlighters and such.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking that some of this is now pre-configured in Neovim, so I would give it a try for a while and see how that works.
So as someone who uses Vim but not Neovim, what is the advantage of Neovim over Vim?
I like the fact that the config is written in Lua, which means it's a lot more. It's less rigid, I guess. Like you can kind of make it do more things because it's actually written in a proper like programming language and stuff. So you can do some pretty clever things in the Lua stuff. That's probably the main difference I think that most people would see is that the configs are written in Lua and like it allows for a further extension, and it seems to fit with other tools as well. Like there's some things that like could be, so they have like LSPs, the language server, the language things. I can't remember exactly what it stands for. Basically, it's like a language server program thing. So like for syntax highlighting, linting, auto completion of code, that kind of thing. Those are really easy. And actually, I think LSP config is actually built into Neovim versus Vim. And so like some of the like code completion and linting and stuff is a lot easier to go in there. And I've noticed that it works a lot better with other language written plugins. So like things that are written in Rust or something else like tend to plug in a lot better than I remember Vim doing that in the past.
Okay.
But
But it
that's all
is
like
still,
back end stuff, right?
gotcha. But it is still like command line, you're in the
Yeah.
terminal. It's not,
Still your
Well, I'm
same
thinking of
insert,
GVim,
normal
okay.
visual mode. Yeah.
I was thinking of GVim there for a second, I think.
No,
That it
no,
was
this
a
is-
graphical, which is
yeah.
really just Vim in a window.
right, yeah. Vim that you can close easily, yeah.
So at this point, if someone were to like, because Vim's one of those things that you kind of, when you're new to Linux, you're it's probably something that is recommended for you to learn. Is Neovim then the better choice than just regular Vim to learn? I mean,
I think if you're going to be writing code, like if you're going to actually be writing a bunch of stuff, Neovim is the better choice. If you're just going to be editing the occasional config, just because you're in the terminal, Vim's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's-
and that's
that's
what
my
I
big
normally
distinction, yeah.
do is I'm just editing configs, at the bash shell prompt.
Mark.
And
Don't sell yourself short. You're not just editing config files.
but I thought, well, I'll give it a try, and I think it does. It does have some syntax highlighting, even for just bash, aliases and such. So
Yeah. That's
Okay,
what
I'm
I'm saying.
gonna
The
give it a try
Linux
for a
server
while.
thing, the language server thing's built in. So like you get a lot of that out of the box.
yeah.
Would I lose any points if I told you that I've been using terminal-based editors less and less, and I find that Kwrite is kind of like my jam dog, or Kate. I'm sorry, Kate.
Real talk. I have a soft spot for Kate. Not gonna lie. I do.
Me too.
It's
Yeah,
good.
Kate's pretty good.
I feel like I wish people gave Kate more love from like a third party perspective. Like that's the big thing missing from Kate is like the stuff like VS Code has all the extensions and stuff.
Right.
If you can get that kind of extension thing built into Kate, chef's kiss right there.
Yeah. Yeah, there is something about the KDE presentation, the perspective on like what a UI looks like that to me, at least for an editor, makes so much sense. So Kate has always been like that, the text editor is the best part of Plasma. But yeah, no, Kate is definitely, and it has lots of capabilities built right in. So a lot of stuff that is a plugin in other editors is really just part of Kate, which is pretty impressive. You can tell they use it as part of development, the people who care are actually using it. So
yeah. And then on the Neovim thing, I actually probably about last week, maybe earlier this week, I finally like 100% switched over to Neovim from VS Code at work. So it's good. I was actually having to do like a presentation. I had to show my screen on Teams, and they're like, "The heck is this?" Like, everybody else is using VS Code. They're like, "What is this?" They're like watching the cursor jump around. They're like, "This is just fun to watch." Like, I don't know what you're doing, but it's cool. And I'm just like, "Yeah, here it is."
I have a question for you, Adam and Mark. How long do I have to grow my beard before I can use Vim and Neovim? Because growing hair for me is a bit of a struggle.
It's the other way around. You start using Vim and Neovim, and the beard just comes.
Oh, that's the trick.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Vince, no matter if you've never been able to grow a beard before or not, if you use Neovim, you'll start to spread, and it'll come way up high,
right?
close
Yeah,
to your eyeballs,
and way down low too. Like
Yeah,
it
yeah,
kind of
like-
starts to meet with the chest. Yeah.
Great. I'm sure Mrs. V is going to love that.
Oh yeah.
So Don in chat says, I poked Neovim once, but it wasn't on my other machine, so I forgot about it. And now he's been reminded, so you're welcome, Don.
So do you just map Vim to Neovim in that case, or do you actually run Neovim like
So-
intentionally?
Normally, I just run nvim, although the command nvim, but here on Nix, there's actually like a special thing that automatically replaces the alias for you. So you can like
Okay.
set in the Nix config to like replace the alias of VI and Vim with NVim. And I'm just like, I normally don't do that, but so
Yeah,
even after replacing the alias, I still type NVim most of the time.
and that's what I did too. I just ran NVim for the first couple of tries, and then honestly, I did forget about it this week. And you know, I didn't. I'm on so many servers throughout the week that don't have NVim that, you know, I likely will not continue to use it just because, you know, I'm jumping out of just so many servers during the week that, you know, that I can never keep track of it. So I've got a day job with Linux, so.
That's why you run all the stuff from within NVim.
So you talked.
I mean, it's actually
about
an option, but yeah.
custom. You talked about custom config and everything. Do you? So with Vim, I've done like a really basic custom config to have like line numbers and like, you know, just like really simple stuff. But
right.
Do you have like pretty extensive?
Yeah. I'll send it to you in a link in Telegram or something. But yeah, I do have a Vim.
Okay.
Like my NVim stuff. I think when I pasted it into Kate to check something on it, I think it said it was like 13,000 characters or something. It was like, hey, you sure you want to paste this? But yeah, so it's kind of big, yeah.
What's happening, Conan?
Hey, it took me like a hot minute to realize, oh, I'm looking in the wrong place, and this is how I jump into this thing. So it's like, it's been so long since I've last come into this because my schedules have just been chaos forever. But hey, I had a 3-day weekend, so
you're here now.
Yeah, I'm here now, and we're talking about my second favorite topic, which is CentOS. In theory, apparently we're just talking about Plasma instead, which is fine.
Well, no, you missed. We've been talking about Neovim for about the last 15 minutes.
Oh, well, that's way down at the bottom of the list.
Oh.
I am on the world stage of editors. I prefer graphical text editors to terminal ones.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And if I have to use a terminal one, the order is Emacs Nano, lots of other things, and then Vim at the end.
I started on Vim, and so I don't like really have a problem with it. And
I
also
started with MS-DOS editor, so like we're gonna
yeah,
like I mostly the editors that I've gone with in general when it comes to terminal-based ones have been ones that feel like that one. And so like when I got into using open source software or free software stuff in the early 2000s, like the first thing I was using was DJGPP, which came with a DOS build of GCC and Emacs and a lot of ports of like core utilities and stuff. So my first exposure to open source software as a whole actually came from that and using Emacs. And I was like, oh, this is a big upgrade from the Borland Turbo C editor and the MS-DOS editor. And that's pretty much like how it stuck for me. Nowadays, I do quick edits in Nano. And then if I'm doing a bunch of like programmatic work, I'll do it in Emacs or a graphical text editor, which I prefer, like Kwrite or Kate. I've been using Kate a lot more lately since now I live more in KDE Plasma world than splitting the difference between GNOME and Plasma. And yeah, Kate's super nice. I don't really know why desktops don't invest in having a decent graphical text editor. It really does make your life better when you have one.
I use it all the time, Kate. Like it's almost always open because I just use it as for numerous things. I have like different cut sheets for different projects that I'll just open up in Kate because I can then position it the way I need it, and then I can copy and paste from it. It's actually not really, I'm not using it very powerfully at all. But I do want to say, my first text editor that I used, thinking about it, I mean, besides like the interface in the Commodore 64, would actually be Emacs on the Amiga, because Amiga had Emacs.
Right, because the Emacs style editor became super popular in the 80s, and it was all over the place. Like, it was included in Next. It was, which is why it survives to Mac OS today, because it was the chosen terminal text editor for next step machines. Also, the chess program in Mac OS is actually a front end for GNU Chess, which is actually kind of cool. It's very fancy and technically sort of open source front end, because I believe the source code is included in the Apple SDK, and it is also released on the Apple open source website, like apple.com/open source, where you can go download the open source components that make up Mac OS.
Vince, what are you studying? You're very intently looking at Emacs.
Emacs, it's got to be
No.
Emacs.
No?
No.
Okay.
I'm just playing with my audio settings. Sorry.
No worries.
Okay. No, it's okay.
So I got a comment from Ulfnik. I don't know how to say his name properly. I apologize. Yeah, it says, something cool I found out today. CryptPad.fr lets you make shared documents similar to HedgeDoc and Google Docs, but can also be shared code editing and syntax highlighting. So then he also gives a link to that as well, which I thought was interesting. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit on left field there, but I think that might be interesting to check out. I think I could see some value in that for sure.
If you need to share an encrypted, I'm guessing CryptDocs means it's encrypted, obviously.
Maybe.
Yeah. So the CryptPad stuff, I think, is run by the what is it? The Frama source people, the folks that make Framadate and all those other things. I think they also have a hand in it. But CryptPad is essentially a custom storage, which all the data that you work with is client-side encrypted in your browser before being sent back to the server. And on your end, it launches OnlyOffice in the web, wrapped inside of a CryptPad, inside of this interface. And so what it does is it creates a temporary storage in your browser. You do all your document stuff in the temporary storage in the browser. It transparently saves it in your internal browser storage in encrypted form and sends the encrypted form back to the servers.
Oh, and they're doing, just looking at the website, they're basically giving you everything for free unless you need extra space, faster support, or support privacy. Yeah, that's awesome. Software as a service. Yeah, sweet.
It's all open source too.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, that's great.
How the heck did we get here from what this topic is supposed to be?
Welcome to Linux Saloon.
Yeah, so it's like the conversation sort of zigs and zags to different topics just as it goes. But this is an introduction. It's kind of like an icebreaker chat. That's what this section is. And then so what you've been doing in Linux or tech, just kind of a casual way to start it off. And then once the conversation kind of sort of dies or abruptly kind of, how do we get here? Then that's a good transition point to segue to the main topic.
But wait, there's a main topic?
Yeah, well, there's a
main. There's supposed to be. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, there is. So if you have not done so yet, Neal, you can actually give your vote on how CentOS works for you, how the exploration, however you want to define it for you, is going. So I put that poll. It's in the. I put it in the Zoom here too, if you want to check that out. But normally Eris is here to do the polls, but I'm missing him, as I tend to. I kind of lean on him a lot, so maybe he's tired of it, and of me specifically, I'm sure, leaning on him. But it's understandable. I'd be tired of it too. So the straw poll was, how has your experience with CentOS Stream been? We had 28% say it's okay. 21% said it's amazing, but that for $1. I'm not sure what that means. I'm sorry. I'd buy that for $1.
Means that you actually like it enough to give money.
Yep. 2 votes said did not have a good time with it. Which is also 13% said I'm not interested in this exploration. And then also I'm not able to do the exploration. 1 says it is good, and no votes for the rest of it. There's no votes for Tux Penguin. Not even that. That's kind of sad. So first, we're going to talk about the CentOS, the distro exploration. Now remember, for a little bit of ground rules here, in case we've forgotten, the intent is to talk about the different aspects of the operating system and discuss the experience from using it. This is a discussion by which should be objective and constructive. Non-objective opinions like this is garbage is not helpful. But rather, if you say, I wish I had a specific feature, or I really need features that allow me to do X, Y, and Z, that's benefiting the conversation and those in the future that want to actually watch this and see what we think of it. The point is to highlight the positives, but not to ignore the lowlights of the project. So remember, this is a labor of love for some, so let's not poo-poo on it. Also, if you want to check out a great history of CentOS, linuxuserspace.show, episode 316. So check that out. It's very good, very informative. Leo gives you a fire hose of information about the history of CentOS, one that'll make your brain hurt a little bit, like right here. It kind of hurts like right here because there's just so much information. I'm not saying you shouldn't listen to it. That's not how I was trying to position that. So if it came off that way, ignore what I said. So Eric, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about
it.
Yeah,
it was pretty good.
I thought it was great. I didn't actually realize how old it was and then like how it went through different changes.
And because of me being me, I actually was there for some of those things. Yeah. And there's there's even more detail to that could have been added. That's just like, my gosh, the CentOS story is really a saga in its own right. And it's a very difficult story to tell because it's woven into the stories of Red Hat Linux, the Fedora project, both past and present, and all the other things that have happened in the Linux ecosystem as it was growing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really kind of part of the original Linux story, like the core, like where it all started. And I think that fact makes it that much more of an interesting distribution to play with.
Yeah, the longevity is definitely impressive, to say the least. And it's one of those things that just continues to move forward without any signs of becoming less relevant. And if anything, it becomes more relevant. So Nate wanted me to just go ahead and touch on CentOS Stream 9 and just read some of their sort of high-level marketing stuff on that. So CentOS Stream is a Linux distribution where open source community members can develop, test, and contribute to a continuously delivered distribution upstream for Red Hat Enterprise Linux, all in tandem with Red Hat developers. So Red Hat develops the Red Hat Enterprise Linux source code in the CentOS Stream development platform before releasing new Red Hat Enterprise Linux versions. Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9 is the first major release built within the CentOS Stream. When you use CentOS Stream, you benefit by gaining early access to the same source code Red Hat developers and engineers use to produce the next version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. The platform provides a continuous stream of content, making CentOS Stream a preview of future Red Hat Enterprise Linux releases. CentOS Stream code becomes the next minor release of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, so you can contribute directly to Red Hat Enterprise Linux and test your workloads before new releases are published. So that's really cool. There's a lot of value in that statement, right?
Yep. I think so. I think that's the thing that I think is really unique about CentOS and the way they're doing it is because I know a lot of people didn't like the change to the stream. Or I think actually it was probably a communication issue more than it was anything else. People thought they're taking away somebody else's toys is kind of how I think it was interpreted.
My gosh. All right. So all of this has the ripples of what happened 20 years ago when Red Hat Linux was discontinued because it just kind of happened without a lot of people knowing that it was going to happen, and people flipped out, and it took a few years, but now we don't care. And the difference between then and now is that back then Linux companies were looked on a little bit more favorably than they are now. In general,
really,
anti-corporation sentiment has gotten a lot higher in the last couple decades.
Really?
In the Linux community, because in the late 80s and early 90s, the Linux companies were looked on as abattoirs or advocates of the open source community, extending them out further and further.
Mhm.
But like into the aughts and like for the last 10 years in particular, it's sort of twisted in on itself, particularly because of Oracle and all these other companies that have less than good reputations in the open source space, getting a larger and larger cross section of the press, the open source press, really. And so you also have a lot of negativity around it because companies that are not open source centric, that happen to have an outstanding amount of influence on open source, are changing the way open source is built, consumed, delivered, and favored. And so a lot of the cultural predispositions that we had back then have been fading because of an injection of new people, an injection of different people, an overall cultural change in how open source relationships are viewed. And generally speaking, that has led to essentially the repeat of what happened 20 years ago with a slightly different outcome of people distrusting the company in a very severe fashion compared to the last time. Like the last time this happened, Red Hat Linux was being combined with this Fedora project that is a collection of add-on packages. The idea was that Red Hat Linux would be opened up and people could contribute to it. This sounds familiar, right? And it took a while, but that happened. But like, aside from the community being like slightly annoyed that it took longer than it should have, in general, there was an expectation it was going to happen. And when it did, people were generally happy about it. Now, fast forward 20 years, this is what open source winning question marks, quoties, looks like. You have a lot of people who use open source as a way of consuming and not contributing and not being part of the community. They're essentially pulling the thing and taking advantage of it without giving back and supporting it. And these people were always there, but they were never prevalent in the same way that contributors were, in the sense that they didn't have a voice, and now they do. Well, CentOS, over the years, before this transition to Stream, before Red Hat brought the project and started making these changes, had been dying. It had been in a very bad place. And when Red Hat basically acqui-hired the project, there were a number of interesting circumstances around that. Very complicated, very not fun circumstances that led to that happening. Not going to get into it, but that's there. I think there's like a couple of write-ups that actually describe the situation if you want to find out. But forward a little bit to that, one of the things that kind of came out of it was that there was this general interest from people, like myself included. I remember at Red Hat Summit 2015, which was the first summit after the announcement, second summit, a couple summits after the announcement of acquiring CentOS, where I was like, give me a way to contribute to RHEL. I want to be able to fix things. It is very, very annoying that bugs are staying broken.
Right.
Like, sometimes my bugs are just not important enough for them to go and do the investigation to fix. I have the wherewithal to fix it. I can provide a patch. Give me a way to do this. And I know that I was personally asking for this for years. There were other people that were asking about it. And that's where the concept of CentOS Stream starts from. Like, I could tell you that I've had bar conversations after Red Hat summits with people for talking about this idea and saying like, this would be great because it opens up a new opportunity of like the contributing and supporting the communities and being able to make RHEL better and whatever.
So bar conversations like a saloon?
Like a saloon, indeed. Actually, I think one of them was called a Saloon in Boston. I don't remember. It's a lot of bars, places. There's a lot of bars and pubs.
There's a lot of booze intertwined with free and open source. It seems like
there's a lot of booze intertwined with open source. It is, especially if you're an openSUSE, then there's official booze. But yeah, like now we, fast forward a few years, like around 2019, 2020, the introduction of the CentOS Stream project is basically coalescing around this idea of giving you the opportunity to see RHEL as it is being made and giving you the opportunity to influence it. Then, we all know the legacy CentOS was wound down for CentOS Stream. And what was missed in all of this of all the hoopla around it was that for the first time in like a decade, people are actually working in CentOS doing stuff again. So you've got the hyperscale SIG. You've got the vert SIG. You've got the cloud SIG doing stuff. You've got storage. There's a number of different special interest groups doing all kinds of stuff. There's now an alternative images SIG that's working on making live media for CentOS. CentOS doesn't officially provide live DVDs anymore.
Right.
It's just installed DVDs. Well, there's a SIG that's working on supporting live DVDs so that people can, get a live media experience to check out the desktop and do the thing and all that stuff. Like, the community is able to participate and do stuff. And when there are bugs related to their use case, they can fix them. If you look, the source code for RHEL is now publicly tracked on a GitLab repo. If you go to gitlab.com/redhat, one word, /CentOS-stream, then you can see everything that makes up CentOS Stream. Also, if you know what to do, you can also search it and see that I actually go and fix a whole bunch of things a lot in there. But the thing is, everyone has the opportunity to do that. There's a way for people to contribute and help make it better. And that directly impacts the viability of the platform. And from that perspective, I consider the community enterprise operating system more true than it's ever been before, because it is something that the community has the power to work in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, a big deal. And from that framing, CentOS is great now, whereas I used to just not be interested in CentOS because it didn't really give me anything of value from that. Sure, it's a RHEL platform, whatever, but I can't. If something's broken, I can't fix it.
So I'm a little confused about the relationship between Fedora and CentOS and how they feed into RHEL.
Okay.
Now, so my base understanding is I understand Factory, Tumbleweed, Leap, and SLE,
mm-hmm.
or SLES, or whatever you want to call it, because it's the server
Just go
edition.
with
SLE, because it's all the products.
Yeah.
And so I understand that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't fully understand because to me, I thought Fedora fed into Red Hat, but is that not exactly correct? So
that we're going to start from openSUSE, and then I'll map it to the Fedora, because the Fedora ecosystem. So
my favorite subject is openSUSE, by the way.
Of course,
it is.
And since you understand openSUSE well, I think this is going to help contextualize the answer. For all the rest of you, I'm sorry. But since I work in both Fedora and openSUSE, I understand both ecosystems very well. So in openSUSE land, you have Factory. Mm-hmm. Factory is where all the stuff goes. Now, Factory is essentially equivalent to Fedora Rawhide. It's a rolling development tree. Difference is Factory and both Factory and Rawhide get OpenQA tests running on them all the time. The difference is OpenQA tests on openSUSE Factory, if everything passes to a point. If everything passes,
percentage-wise, it's a percentage game.
Yeah, it's a percentage game. That's why I said to a point. Yeah. There's some soft fails. But when it gets to a certain level where it's okay, then that thing that was tested is then copied into what is called factory snapshot. And that is openSUSE Tumbleweed.
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially a factory snapshot. Now we go next level here. When we're talking about how does it become SUSE Linux Enterprise? SUSE Linux Enterprise comes from taking a factory snapshot and branching it, or forking it, really. So they fork it into creating a SUSE SLE code stream. Currently, right now, that is happening as ALP, the Adaptable Linux Platform.
Right.
That is a current, ongoing, continuously forking factory build as they figure out what they want it to look like. So they're doing it out in the open. They did it actually last time with SLE 15, right? They forked Tumbleweed to make SUSE SLE 15, and you could see as it was being reconciled into becoming SUSE Linux Enterprise, how it was shrinking, how they were changing things, and so on. They were doing that out in the open. Now, in Fedora land, this process is similar. What happens is we start from Rawhide, and then we get to a point where Rawhide is being branched for a Fedora release. So right now, we've just branched Rawhide to create Fedora Linux 38. So Fedora Linux 38 is in development right now, and the beta is going to come out sometime soon. I don't have the date offhand right now, but it's supposed to be like, I think, in the next couple of weeks. So if we move forward one more year, I'm going to use a very concrete flow to kind of explain what's going on. Rawhide is being branched for Fedora Linux 40. Fedora Linux 40, actually Rawhide as a whole, I should step back. Rawhide is actually built two ways continuously. One way is the standard Rawhide that we all understand becomes a Fedora release. The second way is something called Enterprise Linux Next, or ELN. And that is a continuous build of the Rawhide sources as if it's going to become Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And so 1 year from now, Fedora Linux 40 is going to be branched. At the exact same time, CentOS Stream 10 is going to be branched from the ELN version of that tree. So the standard Rawhide tree at 1 year's time will become Fedora Linux 40. But the ELN version of that same tree at those same commits and whatever is going to turn into CentOS Stream 10. That's what happened 2 years ago in 2021 for CentOS Stream 9. So Fedora Linux 34 went out the door when it was branched. 2 copies went out. One went branched to 34. The other were branched to CentOS Stream 9. So as CentOS Stream 9 is being refined over the course of a year, it becomes Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9. In a year from now, they will start that process again. It's every 3 years they're going to do it. In a year from now, they're going to start that process again. CentOS Stream 10. Refine it, consolidate it, simplify it, figure out what they want to have, what they don't want to have, switch over the branding, and that becomes, in a year's time, in 2025, Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10. But CentOS Stream 10, you can think of it as the EL10. CentOS Stream 10, you can think of as the EL10 branch. And then every Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9 release is essentially a branch off of that. So each point release, 10.0, 10.1, 10.2, and so on, every 6 months is essentially a small branching point for maintenance updates. But the rest of it is continuously flowing through this main line. So in this respect, this is where it differs from openSUSE, because in openSUSE land, every leap code stream is essentially a refork of some parts of it from like every point release. So like, for example, openSUSE Leap 15.4 upgraded the kernel to the latest kernel that was available in Tumbleweed as of like the end of August or something like that of the prior year. That's why it's on like some 5.14 kernel or something like that. So select components get pulled back from Tumbleweed, and this is the same thing is happening in CentOS Stream. Select components come in from Rawhide or from Fedora stable releases or whatever, and they continuously integrate that into this baseline platform that they've branched from Fedora. So they're not too different in that sense, but in some respects they're very different because there's more of a direct flow downward waterfall in the RHEL model than there is in the SUSE model. In the SUSE model, you have lots of little ditches and you have to take that soup can and like pull the water and pour it into into the ditches. Whereas the ravine just keeps flowing downward in the RHEL model.
Okay. Well,
does that explain it?
It does. Yeah, it does. So what I was curious though is, so Rawhide is analogous to factory. So there really isn't an analogous to Tumbleweed in Fedora.
So in Fedora land, what we would consider Tumbleweed essentially is when we branch a Rawhide for a Fedora release. So the branch state of Fedora 38 right now, that is essentially a Tumbleweed snapshot.
Okay, so they just snapshot at a slower cadence than...
Right.
Okay.
So we snapshot basically at 6 months. You snapshot every day.
Right.
More or less.
More or less, yeah.
Sometimes multiple days, but usually it's about one a day. The mirror systems can't handle pumping out faster. It really can't handle it.
I don't think that they can currently handle it, actually.
Yeah. I know that when I was at Datto, I had to stop mirroring Tumbleweed because we couldn't handle it. It was too much churn.
Well, I just say, like, sometimes in the middle of doing an update, one of the repos, like specifically this, because I run snaps also, whether you want to, I like snaps.
Yeah, sure.
The snap one, sometimes, like, between the time that it started the update to when I have to pull it, had an update in it. So I basically I just ignore it, and then I come back and I just do that one again. So
I'm not gonna rail at you too hard over snaps. I'm the guy who brought snaps to the Fedora CentOS ecosystem in the first place. So
I think they run great.
Yeah, they're fine.
Yep. So
I will. That's as far as I'll go there.
CentOS has a lot of options, so you can still get CentOS Stream 8 is still available, but 9 has, for different architectures, for the ISOs you can download. They have x86-64, ARM64, IBM Power PC, 64 LE, little endian. Yeah. And then the IBM Z, or the S390X.
S390X, yep, 64-bit mainframes. If you have a mainframe, I would love to talk to you, because basically almost nobody has one of those. But if you have one that can run CentOS Stream 9, I'd be, 1, very impressed. 2, want to know what the heck you're working on. 3, how the heck did you afford it?
I wonder if we could get like one that's being mothballed.
Maybe. In like the old saying goes is that you don't really own those things; you kind of rent them. Because I think usually the way it works is that you get them leased from IBM and then they replace them for you.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, because like the only mainframes I've ever worked on are all decommed ones in computer labs, so I would be able to tell you how a current one is actually maintained. Yeah,
it'd be interesting to see one. I mean, it probably looks like one of those like Cray computer setups. I have no idea what they look like, but it's in my mind.
I know that they used to look like that.
Well, that's how I want to imagine them, and I want to imagine they still have reel-to-reel. Just for me, I know they probably don't, but I don't want to. I don't want to break that.
Cray is owned by HP now.
Who is? Cray is?
Cray is owned by Hewlett Packard Enterprise.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, apparently they've been owned by HPE for a while. At least like 10-ish years, 15 maybe.
I didn't know that. But I just
found out the other day because one of my friends apparently went to HPE and is like now working on Cray stuff. I'm like, how are you working on Cray stuff? Oh yeah, HPE's on Cray for like forever. It's like, oh, okay.
I mean, I don't know what that means exactly, but that sounds cool. And that's
I don't know
what
it means either. I don't know what it means either. He just mentioned Cray and I was like, wait, what? But you work at HP. Why are you working on Cray? And then he tells me, yeah, Cray is part of HP. And I was like, what?
That's pretty wild. Yeah, because I really haven't heard the Cray name in a long time. Has anybody here heard of Cray for a while? Is that no, nothing new? I mean,
I think they released a new supercomputer recently.
but who buys these supercomputers? Like, I mean, it's like
research laboratories.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty much. Oh yeah, so Cray was acquired by HPE in 2019. Huh. All right.
That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
Do the new ones have a cool seat like the old ones used to?
I haven't seen one.
I always used to think that the old Cray computers.
The last time I saw a Cray computer, I was in college, and it was like 12 years ago.
I remember seeing pictures of Cray computers, and it would be like a tall thing, and then it'd have a horizontal thing, and look like a seat. A really fancy one.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's one of those things I'll probably never actually get to play with. Maybe someday. It'd be really cool.
Never say never. You could go ask somebody. You could go ask somebody nicely, and they might find you one to play with.
Hi, I'm Cubicle Nate. Can I play with this? No, go away.
You would be surprised. There are a lot of people out there that are like, yeah, we'll give you like a slot to play with this, and you can come and do a tour and see stuff because you're an enthusiast, and we like seeing people be enthusiastic about our stuff because there aren't that many people who are.
See, now I think this is total derailment here, but I think if I were building a supercomputer, I'd make it look like the Whopper from War Games. That's how I would do it, just because.
So Nate,
No, I'm sorry. We need more rows of LEDs here. This is unacceptable.
More LEDs. This is like RGB on steroids, basically.
So Nate, if you ever find yourself in Mountain View, California, or in the Bay Area, there's a computer history museum there, and it's a must-see for guys like us.
Yeah.
I've been there, and it's definitely and there is a room with IBM mainframe stuff.
That would be so cool.
It is on my list of places to go someday.
Yeah.
Ooh.
They have one of the original Google racks where that Google started on, and then of course all the Commodores and Apple II Pluses and all the things from that era that you enjoy. So now that's definitely a must see.
Yeah. There was a exhibit in there's a museum in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's a Grand Rapids Museum, is what it's called, I think. And they had some exhibits there. This is a couple of years ago, but they had different decades of things, and it was really cool to see like what computery things they pulled out from each of the decades to put in the sets and everything else. And I don't know, I find that stuff very interesting. And I didn't care when I was a kid so much, but maybe because I'm older that I start to care about history. I don't know what that is, but it's one of those things, I guess. So, actually, about CentOS, since we need to talk about that. So
why we're all here.
We're here to talk about CentOS.
Yeah, that's why we're all hanging out.
The setup process. And so for me to describe the setup process, that's what you did to go from downloading the ISO to having a running system. How did that go for people? Jinda, you said you had some challenges?
I got it installed. Once I got it running in VirtualBox, which took a couple of tries. Yeah, I had to switch a few things around. I kept losing the mouse pointer.
That's fun.
I kept disappearing. It would be there, and then as soon as you click something, it would disappear. It was like really annoying. But I fixed it, got it running, and got it installed, but then I couldn't get the guest editions in VirtualBox to install to save my life. I tried my best. If anyone knows how to do it, let me know. I'm just curious.
I think it might be an issue with VirtualBox itself, because I had issue downloading the guest editions. It just locked up on, like, that didn't complete for me.
Oh, I got it to complete. I just got errors.
Oh, okay.
I was on VMware. I was able to install the OpenVM tools just perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, I did it in VMware as well as on KVM.
Okay.
Because I have access to both of those. I have a computer that runs VMware Fusion, and most of my other computers have GNOME boxes or Virt Manager or whatever. And it was pretty straightforward in both of them. I really didn't have to do anything special, but I also have done this to VirtualBox for like years now, because It used to make my computers randomly crash, and so I was super not happy with having it on my computer anymore. So
not that you hold a grudge or anything.
Yeah, well, it's quite one thing to be
you.
just kind of buggy. It's quite another to
Yeah.
cause kernel panics all the time.
Right.
Right. Yeah. That's
Jinder,
not
what
good.
did you need the add-ons for? Just out of curiosity.
The screen was too small, so I wanted to make it bigger. And
Okay, because you know what, I've stopped installing them. If you use, I'd have to figure out which. I think it's the default video. I'm missing the terminology here. That if you use that one within the virtual machine itself, you can actually just go to display and choose whatever resolution you want to run it at.
Mm-hmm. I got it eventually to work. It's just like you just can't get the VirtualBox extensions to install it. You know what I mean? It's like you do the same thing every time, and stupid me just did. And I'm like,
yeah, I've just had so many problems with VirtualBox myself. And I don't know what the deal is, honestly.
What platform are you guys using VirtualBox on?
MX Linux.
Okay, and you?
Oh, I don't have problems necessarily. I run it on either Arch or Ubuntu.
Okay, so you guys are both just doing it on Linux.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if you guys are using Linux, you should try using KVM based stuff because it's all there and
yeah, I use Virtman most of the time. I mean, to be honest, VirtualBox is just lazy.
Yeah, sure. No, it's the lazy choice, and a lot of things have kind of suggested it over the years. Is
right.
Just when it causes kernel panics and doesn't quite work right, then it's kind of like you can't really.
Well, and to be honest, like it's not like Virtman is difficult by any stretch of the imagination. You just have to, it's a little bit different in the way that you have to set it up, but I honestly appreciate the way that it's so modular and the how you handle the hardware, how you handle the configuration. It's actually way more powerful, which is why it's a much more
very granular,
professional. Yeah. But you don't have to do all that stuff. I mean, you just basically point it to the ISO, you tell it what it is, and
create a disk and go.
Yeah, the spice stuff sometimes can be a little weird if you don't have the spices set up to have the scaling or whatever. They both have, nothing's perfect. I mean, GNOME boxes is pretty foolproof sometimes.
It's one of my laptops I use GNOME boxes on.
Yeah.
It's pretty nice. Although every once in a while it starts up and says, I don't have virtualization extensions turned on, and then proceeds to run the VM anyway. So that's special.
Yeah. So past that then. Go ahead, Mark.
So I was going to say from the download, first thing that surprised me was that the download was 9 gig, right? Even for the Fedora workstation, live is only like 2 gig, right? And then again, coming from working in an enterprise environment on a day-to-day, I'm still using CentOS 7 and 8 non-stream versions, and I always it was nice to be able to pull down an ISO that was less than a gig and just get the server installed. I was really surprised that this CentOS Stream 9 was 9 gig. And then, but when I got it installed, it does come with a GNOME desktop, which I was not expecting. I was expecting just a CLI terminal, because that's what I typically use CentOS for is as a server base, and I don't expect it to really come with anything except beyond SSH.
This is where I jump in and say, RHEL has a workstation product too.
Yeah.
And they do in fact sell it to people who do very professional things on computers. And that's why you have a GNOME desktop in CentOS Stream, because Red Hat Enterprise Linux ships a desktop as an option. Now, the full DVD thing versus like what CentOS had before, the reason why it's this way now is because CentOS Stream 9 only produces the media that RHEL produces. So RHEL only produces a boot ISO, which is a net install ISO, and a install DVD, and that's it.
Yeah.
And
And
so
that's got to be a huge, just from testing perspective. They only have to test 2 images when they release.
Yeah, it's a big deal from that front. Like I can tell you from the previous eras of CentOS that depending on which install DVD you got, for example, if you installed the server roll with the regular install DVD or the minimal install DVD, the 1 gig or the 2 gig versions, you might not have a firewall installed, which is because somehow the firewall gets chopped off the package list that's included on those images. But if you get the full version, you get a firewall. And so, what? And that's the kind of stuff that turns the experience into a consistency nightmare. And say all the good or ill about the enterprise, but they would really like the experience to be consistent. So, so whether you use the net install or you use the full DVD, you're at least always going to get the firewall if you choose the server role. And that's, I think, pretty much kind of the point there. Is like they favor experience consistency on that front. And it is unfortunate that it means that, you get a frankly enormous ISO download with an ISO size that's actually bigger than any optical media you could buy on the market.
I didn't actually notice the size. I just downloaded it and I walked away and I came back and it was done. I didn't think about it. I didn't even look until Mark said something just now, because I literally started the download in the morning and then I was away from the computer for like 6 hours or so, and then I came back to it and installed it. So it's not like I didn't pay attention. So, and that doesn't bother me.
I think
so
most
much.
of us wouldn't have paid too much attention to it because for a lot of us, we have the disk space and it's just download it, put it on there, then don't worry about it. But
my mind goes to, again, I'm if I'm setting up servers for enterprise, right? How big is this? How big is the image? And then what am I expecting to need for runtime, root partition and such. And I was just not expecting all that to be on that image. So
yeah, it always throws people for a loop. It is one of those more surprising aspects of CentOS and RHEL, really. Like, one of the more interesting things I've observed, having used all these things for such a long time, is you can watch every point release of RHEL as the install DVD gets slightly bigger. So, like, I think the install DVD for RHEL 8.0 was like 8 gigs, and I think it's currently like 9. So it's only been 2 years it's only been 3 years since it was released. So it's like, well, okay.
I think as a rule, we're not necessarily like removing features in computers. I think we're adding capability, not unless you're GNOME, you're not generally removing capabilities.
Well, I mean, at least GNOME has kind of stopped deleting. Well, okay. They've sort of walked back on getting rid. They're adding features again. We'll go with that. They're adding capabilities. Like they've been doing that with the quick actions and stuff in 43 and 44. They added the background portal thing that I'm not entirely sure anyone is gonna be able to do anything with yet, but it's there. So they are adding features, I guess. Like, I don't know. Like, the GNOME people, they make a decent desktop. I prefer KDE Plasma. It's community and it's project and the code and the stuff and everything. So actually, one of the first things I did after installing CentOS Stream was activate EPEL and then install KDE Plasma and switch everything to that.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't actually install Plasma. I thought I would just use GNOME on it, and actually I wasn't upset by it this time. Like I kind of.
No,
I mean,
the GNOME experience is okay. Like I actually really like stuff. when I'm working from a laptop in particular. Like my previous work laptop required me to use GNOME for reasons. And so I wound up becoming very familiar with a lot of the GNOME workflows, like hitting the super key to get the overview and then being able to flip through all the workspaces and applications like very quickly with key presses. That actually became super core to my workflow. And then when they added the macOS style touch gestures, I was a super happy camper, because 10 years of having a Mac means that I really live on trackpad gestures, and not having them sucks. And so having them is great. And I was really happy about having all that. And in general, I think GNOME has become a desktop where, as long as you don't try to do too much in it, it'll be kind to you. If you try to do too much customization, it will hurt you. But if you're not doing customization and you're using it as it is, and then you're kind of, maybe living in like single-threaded workflows, like you have an application up on screen and you're working on this, and then you switch over to another application later, I think GNOME does a good job of supporting that workflow very well. But if you're like a heavy multitasker, it can also be good or bad depending on how you approach multitasking. One of the things I appreciate about GNOME is that the dynamic workspaces thing makes it easy for me to just flick applications out to the side and then just deal with them later.
Yeah.
And I really want dynamic workspaces to be an optional feature in KDE Plasma, because I have found that I can't live in a single screen world without virtual workspaces, but I don't need virtual workspaces all the time. And so I would like virtual workspaces when I need them, and when I don't need them, I need them gone. And that's actually like something that kind of came from using GNOME for like 2 years straight. It was like, this is actually pretty useful.
So I use them all the time, but I only use 4 now. That's how I have a way.
I have a 2x2 setup on Plasma.
Yeah, that's what I use, and I just have like a way. This one only has 2 virtual screens because I have an ultra wide, so I just don't need. It's like having 2 right now.
I'm actually going to get an ultra wide soon.
I like them.
I don't know how I feel about it yet, but we're going to find out whether I'm going to like it or hate it. Because I know Michael wound up hating ultra wides, which was a whole separate set of fun.
Yeah, I feel like there's going to be a lot of like this going on. What problem does it solve other than the border in the middle? I don't know. Maybe it might be the most amazing thing ever.
So
I mean, honestly, I'm thinking of just persistently splitting it into 2 displays and having 2 computers connected to it. Because the biggest problem is I actually don't have the desk space to hold a heavy mount for 2 monitors. So I was thinking of an ultra wide to deal with that, because a well-picked ultra wide is lighter than having a custom mount and 2 monitors like affixed to it.
I think the trick with an ultra wide too is that you have to be at just the right distance and angle. And if you do, then you kind of forget, right? I mean, a good monitor, you don't see anything except what you're looking at, right?
Right. That's why the whole curvature thing is now a thing with ultra wides, right? Like,
yeah,
it's all about trying to do that.
Right. I can imagine it's very immersive if you do it right.
So with the ultra wide, if you're going to connect 2 displays, you need to get one of the super ultra wide ones, because I've had a 34-inch like 1440p one, and it was definitely not enough screen space for 2 devices connected to it. When I did that, it was a very like lackluster experience. But a friend of mine has like the 49, like the really wide one, and that's plenty of space for two devices. So just to be aware of that.
I like this one because it has 2. It feels like 2 standard aspect ratio screens side to side. So like if I'm doing like retro gaming stuff, or retro computer stuff, it's like I have 2 standard aspect ratio screens right next to each other. And then outside of that, like I will often actually only work on half the screen and then have like something else going on the other side that I'm just monitoring. But like right now I have Zoom centered, and then I have a little bit on the edges here for like OBS and chat stuff over here, notes on this side, and it works for me. It just works perfectly. I don't need multiple monitors. I just have the one, and I like it a lot. Is it perfect? No, because I'm using it.
Yeah, I just have one 32-inch monitor.
Mhm.
It's more than enough space for me.
For most of my personal computing usage, I don't have multiple monitors. I actually only started having multiple monitors when I went to Datto 8 years ago, and like my workspace was like, "Hey, you get 3 monitors now." I'm like, "Okay, what do? Fine, I guess." Like,
Yeah. It can be fun, and especially if you're doing any kind of data entry or any kind of like where it's helpful to have just that kind of real estate on the screen, or processes that benefit from being on their own screen.
Mhm.
And then that way, you know, this thing, and you know, you think of like when you're trying to get things done quickly, like your memory of like what I need to see is exactly in this spot every time. And yeah, the wall of monitors. I had to set up like that one time when I was doing a lot of sysadmin stuff, and it was great to just sort of have all of the everything I needed to see was just right there. Someone would ask me a question, it's like, whoop, you know, my go straight to it. So it has its advantage, but a lot of times it's just if you're not using it in that context, like it's just kind of overkill. But
yeah, I
hey,
mean,
if that's your thing.
the thing was that before experiencing a multi-monitor setup, I really dug into virtual workspaces and used them very aggressively.
Mhm.
One thing I definitely learned was that I really can't handle virtual workspaces plus multiple monitors. That is way too much screen real estate. It is way too much. So if I have multiple physical displays, I generally turn off virtual workspaces entirely. They're not
Yeah.
helpful, and they just are utterly distracting, and it's like overwhelming for my personal ability to like multitask.
So
Yeah, throw in there like a tiling window manager too, where you can actually map out all the different behaviors. So I switched to this screen, and now I can. It starts to get too granular. Yeah,
the
I know.
the big thing that I like about the ultra wide is for one specific task, and that is video and audio editing. It is just fantastic to have because you have big areas for the previews and for your
And the
different menu
timeline.
options and the timeline.
Oh, and you can look at them at closer to real size
Yeah.
because you have the real estate for
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
And so it's a 1440p is what this is. So it's not 4K. It's,
yeah.
And so it's just
1440 tall.
Yeah. And I honestly I got it cheap on eBay too, and it works great. It's a Samsung. The only thing I don't like about it is like when it wakes up, it like you have to knock on it a little bit, like takes some time for it to like figure out that its circuits have to go live. That's really the only problem with it. It's like an old remember there's like that old black and white TV that your grandparents had and you turn it on and you just waited forever for the tube to warm up. It's a little bit like that, but digital.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, mine looks for its input every time. I'm like, you know what it is. Like you've been hooked to the same one for 10 years now. Like, yeah. But it's the same way. It's 1440p. Back when this was like a really expensive monitor way back when, but it's held up. It's an Acer. It's held up really well.
I mean, so here's the thing. You're going to laugh at this. I have my current desktop monitor is one LG 21-inch 1080p display that I bought 13 years ago. And it is solid. It is fine. It has no ghosting. The colors are great because it's a second gen IPS panel. And it just I don't have a reason to get rid of it. It is a nice display that works great. Except for like I'm gonna get an ultra wide and I can only have one display on the desk. So
you know what? It's always handy to have a spare display.
Yeah,
no
I think
what.
what's gonna happen is it's gonna just sit in the corner and be like my backup in case anything goes horribly wrong. Like the crash cart kind of display.
It's good to have that.
Yeah.
All right, back to CentOS.
Well, actually, it all ties into CentOS.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is me talking about like the workflow of being in GNOME on CentOS.
So I didn't do anything with CentOS. And Nate, I'm sorry go ahead if you have a prompted question, but I had a question.
No, it was it. I just want to make sure, like, for like setting up everybody else, like set up CentOS. They want to tell about like their experience with it. That was I don't know if Vince or Adam had anything they want to fire away.
You want us to be positive, so I'm going to stay quiet.
Okay, that's fair.
Wow. Wow.
Well,
I'm sorry, I have not tried it.
no worries. I just want to say, like, I couldn't get it to start in KVM. It actually would crash out. I had a kernel panic in KVM, and I had to use.
I know why.
Why is that? What did I do
It's
wrong?
because what?
What did I do wrong?
You didn't do it well.
I
It's
wasn't.
not what you did wrong.
I wasn't holding it right.
No. It's not what you did wrong. I think it's actually what the default. Your host computer's openSUSE, right?
Of course. Yep.
Yeah. So, libvirt on openSUSE does not export your host CPU by default into the virtual machine, which means that it is emulating a CPU architecture level that is lower than what CentOS Stream 9 is compatible with.
Oh, okay.
So CentOS Stream 9 moves up to x86-64 v2. So you have to pick a virtual CPU type that matches that. Your computer, I assume, is like some AMD something or other.
It's a Gen 10 Intel.
Gen 10 Intel, that's fine. Either way, it is still x86-64 v2 compatible. But when your virtual machine was created, it didn't actually pass through your CPU's characteristics into the virtual machine. And so the kernel thought it was not on a working configuration and then died.
Okay.
So you can go into Virt Manager and say pass through host CPU, and then you're done.
Okay. Well, I probably should have done some more digging then. I'm like, well, okay, well, I'll just use VirtualBox. And
well, you just assumed that there's no way it could have been openSUSE. So
right, yeah. No, I just
I wonder
figured
if
that
there's a legit reason for them to do that, to be different for some reason. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
It's a good question. No, I don't know. I mean, that sounds like a Neal question. Also, why did openSUSE do that to me?
It's mostly because they haven't realized that it's a problem. Most people haven't noticed it yet as a problem. It's something that's being tweaked. Every distro has this except for Fedora because somebody went and fixed it specifically there.
That's fair.
Actually, no, it might actually not be fixed in Fedora, but it's definitely fixed in RHEL.
All right, so under CPUs, copy host configuration. Right, and that's all it takes.
That's all it takes.
Well, I don't.
Now, if your CPU is actually old and not compatible, instead of copying host configuration, you should pick a CPU that it actually supports, and then it will emulate the missing instructions.
Oh, wow. Well, who would it?
Because QEMU is still an emulator.
Right. Huh. Well, these are things I didn't know about Virt Manager, and now I've just learned something. So, hey, that's...
For all of you other people in the Saloon and on the interwebs who are trying to do CentOS Stream 9 on their computers in a VM and it's not working, that's how you fix it.
So I should emulate the 486.
No.
Oh.
Though, interestingly, I can't get FreeDOS to boot even with doing that. Because there's a certain level of emulation that nowadays QEMU doesn't allow because it's a security problem. Like you can't do floppy disks anymore, which is not helpful if you're trying to do DOS things.
No, it's not. I'm sure they can be fixed.
It probably could be. I think it's more of a function of nobody cares enough to fix it.
But as a so the setup, the install, I think they've made Anaconda better. Like I think it was easier this time than it was in previous times. It wasn't hard. I just the layout was it didn't force me to flow as much, and I think I'm just used to that. So that's really my only complaint. It wasn't bad. It just just was different, I guess. But yeah, I didn't have any problems after that. No, I went through to set up the guest editions, and that everything worked, going through all those instructions, line by line, doing updates. I had no problems with that. The problem was downloading the guest editions. That's the only thing that really failed on me. But really, actually, I thought it was fine. I didn't even install Plasma. I just stuck with a GNOME to see how it would go, and I didn't mind it. I did miss the maximize button, but I just double clicked on the border and it maximized it for me. There's not really a minimize, so I just would hit the meta key and just pop everything up and then grab what I needed, which is fine. It's not my preference, but I mean it wasn't bad. So yeah, I thought the setup was fine. And also it has DNF, and I like DNF. It's probably, don't tell anybody this, but it's actually probably my favorite package manager now. And don't tell, keep that quiet. Don't tell anybody. Just 3 of us. I can't count. But outside of that, the setup process was great. Did anybody use any specific resources to help them with CentOS?
Well, I'm not sure if you what you mean by resource, but I
Well, like a
did
web
what
resource.
Neal did was install the EPEL repository right away.
Okay.
So I could get a couple of extra things. My specific one of the things I usually do in the evaluations is I try to set up XRDP so I can RDP to it from a Windows box and then have the GUI that way. And I'm still in the middle of that.
Oh, okay.
So I haven't completed it.
I think, I don't know if it's actually in CentOS Stream 9, but I know that GNOME is actually, I know in Fedora, GNOME actually has the ability for you to turn on a built-in RDP server. So the GNOME desktop has a built-in RDP server that you can switch on. You don't need XRDP or anything else. It's native. It even handles the fancy things like dealing with the fancy effects and transitions and whatever, and pumping that over the network properly and whatever, because it uses lib3RDP underneath. And I think the package is called GNOME Remote Desktop. And then if you install that, you can configure it. I don't remember if it's in, you know what? Rather than me just keep saying I don't remember anything, I'm just gonna go look it up. GNOME Remote.
Most distros have it just built in. You just go under in your control panel.
GNOME Remote Desktop is actually shipped in CentOS Stream 9. So just install the package, it'll show up, and then you're done.
If you go into,
I'll give it a try.
So if you go into the settings and sharing, one of the 2 share types is remote desktop. Go in there, and then there's some options for how you want it to be shared, device name, blah, blah, blah. So
my point is that if we can get my always big point is there's people that are maybe not familiar with Linux, and the way to get them familiar is let them install it, and then if you can interact with that machine through your Windows desktop by running RDP and getting on Linux, well then maybe they will learn Linux a little bit better. So I know that the RDP will even let you cut and paste. Cut and paste seems to work, even cut and pasting files and such from clipboard. So a lot of that is it's important to be able to interact between systems.
Sure.
I know that, yeah. So that's one of the things I always try. And thank you. I'll try the GNOME Remote Desktop.
Yeah, no, it's been built into GNOME for a while. I know the folks at Red Hat have been working on it for a while now, because I think in the enterprise cases, you're talking about, Mark, like there are people who want to be able to access these things remotely. There's a lot of legitimate use cases for having that kind of capability, even for something as simple as like, hey, I need help. Please help me figure out what's going wrong with this computer, and that kind of remote assistance type stuff. Like, I think that's what the original reason for it to being built into it was. And it's sort of evolved from there. But GNOME Remote Desktop defaults to RDP now. It used to default to VNC, but it's used RDP by default for a while now. And so it'll take your login credentials, I think, and will just let you log in, like kind of the same way you do when you log into a Windows remote box. It's like your login credentials work, and it takes you into the desktop.
Nice. You can actually set the credentials you want to use as part of the settings. Yeah.
See, again, I don't use this feature. I just know it exists because I keep track of all this kind of stuff when other people ask me about it.
Yeah, I use it. And yeah, it's basically just pick your device name, remote desktop, remote control, username, password. Really straightforward to set up, which is great because, again, Mark, to your point, for someone who might not need, understand how to set that kind of stuff up, it's really, here are the 3 things you have to do them, and I can connect.
Yeah, and in the enterprise world, you don't always have the choice of what desktop you get. So and I don't know any enterprises that actually give you a Linux desktop besides maybe Red Hat itself.
Well,
But,
so when I started at Datto 8 years ago, you got Linux by default as a
okay. But
unless you were in finance, then you got Windows, or if you were in sales, then you got Macs.
Yeah.
But like the developers, the engineers, and the support techs and whatever got Linux by default for a very, very long time.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. Most enterprises,
Yeah.
Fortune 100.
The big ones that are old and stodgy and don't know what they're doing, yes, they don't give you Linux by default unless you ask real nicely. But like, the thing is, you know why it doesn't change, right? It's because nobody asks. Because everyone assumes that if they don't that they can't get it, but they can't get it because they don't ask, and because they don't ask, they don't get it. So, ask for it.
Absolutely.
Go ask for rel, and you'll get it. Probably, maybe.
Yeah. If and again, like you mentioned, the Red Hat, the Red Hat desktop. Some companies may say, well, that's actually maybe a better license than licensing from Microsoft or Apple.
I think SUSE, they give a GNOME as well.
Yeah, SUSE has been GNOME since SLES 12.
Yeah,
actually, since SLES 11 it was the default, but in SLES 12 they dropped KDE.
Really? They dropped it entirely?
Yeah. So SLE 11, I think it was like SP2, 3? I want to say 3. SLE 11 SP3 was when they deprecated. They put the deprecation notice for KDE, and then they just didn't include it in SLE 12. Red Hat did the same thing in, I think it was RHEL 7.5. They said we're not going to include it again in the future, and then they dropped it in RHEL 8.
Well, as far as any other resources, like do you guys have any links that you maybe used you thought were valuable? Any websites? I found there wasn't a whole lot of people. I mean, there are a lot of resources out there, but it was more professional looking resources and less like amateur people talking about it. I did notice that when I did some cursory searching. There wasn't like a Cubicle Nate out there that was blathering about it or whatever. Like Fedora, you can find all kinds of things in Fedora. CentOS seems a little bit quieter, but that is what it is. Were there any applications that you installed or tried to install and couldn't get, or was it pretty much everything you needed available? Jinda, you're laughing, so that says something.
Yeah, the first thing I did was install the firewall.
The firewall.
I don't know why it wasn't that. That was the first thing I did. I installed a firewall. I went into I think it uses the GNOME store. I think that's what they called it.
Yeah.
I typed in firewall, popped it in. Then I typed in HTOP, and it wasn't there. No matter what I typed in, nothing was there. There was like about 4 programs in there. And
so firewall. So you have to start the firewall service first.
Mm-hmm.
If you installed it and then you just looked right afterwards, it would not have been started until after you rebooted.
Well, that's true, but HTOP should have been there when I tried to install it.
Yeah, that's true. I don't.
Yeah, I couldn't get it to load anything other than some default software packages that were already there. I thought that was odd. When you opened up the menu to see all the programs that are installed, it had very antique stuff, I thought, installed on it. It looked to me a little old. Some of the stuff, like Bizarro to burn a DVD, which I don't think I've done in years. And Cheese for the web viewer. I haven't ran that in like 8 or 9 years now. I don't know. To me, some of the stuff seemed old and outdated. Maybe it's just me.
I think maybe there's a prioritization discrepancy somewhere in the software. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
I think if you were to look at that from a enterprise perspective, I mean, you're not going to get a lot of software on there, especially desktop. And that was going to be my question is, I've heard people talk about, I think they're saying EPL repository. So, I mean, I know with Fedora, at least for a while, it's gotten a little better recently. That was one of my hurdles was, okay, yes, install Fedora, but now I've got to do, all of these other things on top of it in order to get it to be a reasonable sort of generic desktop. And I wanted to know if, like, because CentOS is so heavily enterprise focused, was that something you had to do? Like Mark, you mentioned, needing to install different software. Was it a case that, you got a very basic system, and then in order to, do?
Yeah, so a lot of times the extra packages for enterprise Linux, a lot of times this is needed to get things that are needed. Again, some of the Xorg stuff is doesn't come in the default packages. Remember, Rail has got what is it? Neal, help me out. Core or base, and then it has.
So there's in contemporary Red Hat Enterprise Linux releases, so that is 8 and 9.
Yeah.
Red Hat Enterprise Linux is broken into 3 layers right now in their layer cake. They've got base OS, then they've got application stream or app stream, and then they have Code Ready Builder or CRB, and then those comprise of the set of stuff that Red Hat itself ships. Yeah. Of those, base OS and app stream are the stuff that is commercially supported. CRB is shipped because people need it and they can't really not ship it. And then all the rest of it is in EPEL. And so if you think about in the concept of in the Ubuntu land, you have this concept of main, universe, and multiverse and whatever.
It's very similar.
EPEL is universe and multiverse, basically. And all the rest of it is, the main is the stuff that's in RHEL. Rather than being in one instance, spread across 2, and the universe is not on by default. Actually, I think it's one of the bigger mistakes in Ubuntu was that making that on by default, because when you try to go into a flow where you want to have it like commercially supported by Canonical, the biggest surprise that you'll learn is that universe is not supported. And you wind up finding that you have a large supply of packages that are not supported that you are using that you thought were supported because they're all coming from Ubuntu. And that's not fun to find out.
So any areas in particular that you found difficult with CentOS that we haven't talked about already? Now Junda has a half smile. No, not really. Yeah, I didn't find it particularly difficult. It did make me think though. I was comparing this to like my first, because it was my first CentOS stream experience, and how I would compare it to my first Linux experience. And good, bad, or otherwise, my first Linux experience, they installed everything by default on Mandrake Linux. Like you got like a wide assortment of all these applications. It took me a long time just to dig through them and understand what they all did. And CentOS, they didn't really inundate you with a lot of applications, but I think a lot of people, they don't want to bog down their systems with a lot of cruft. And I imagine being an enterprise distribution, there's no need to give you Pigeon and other chat clients unnecessarily. If you need a chat client, you know what chat client you need. So it's just a little bit different, I would say. Obviously, they're not focusing a new user on CentOS. You're using CentOS because you know what you're doing and have a purpose for it. Any other, I did want to say, right out of the box, without having to fiddle around, I didn't have to do anything at all. I could watch YouTube videos on CentOS. So that was kind of nice. There was no need to do any messing about. So I don't know if they have that Open264 that openSUSE now, or SUSE ships, and the others, I guess. I'm not really sure. I didn't dig into it. I was just happy. I was watching some like fail army videos with my boy on it. We're sitting on the couch laughing at people hurting themselves. It's terrible. But anyway, it was very funny. Any other thoughts on CentOS? Anything particular? So I'm gonna push this one to Neal, because I think he'll probably be able to encapsulate it best. So why should somebody try CentOS, or why should somebody use CentOS? What is the main reason?
I've got it.
The main reason.
I've got one too.
Yeah, you can go after. But no, I'm getting blasted by DMs, and I'm like, come on, please, like just please stop. Like, just for a little bit so I can like spit out words. Yeah, so the main reason somebody would use CentOS Stream is a reason I think people wouldn't expect someone to say, and that is because they want a good Linux desktop experience or a good Linux server experience. And but they're not able to, for whatever reason, use Fedora. And that is basically it, because CentOS Stream provides you not exactly the stellar desktop experience that Fedora offers, but it comes pretty close. But also it's available and stabilized for a longer time span. And for some people, that is important. And that is something that makes it very attractive. And it's great for giving people an opportunity to have a good, useful, professional grade platform that they can get for free, that they can learn and grow on and contribute to and be part of. And when they go into commercial contexts, those skills grow and transfer into using Red Hat Enterprise Linux at scale. And like, if you're wanting to run production workloads on RHEL, I'm going to just briefly point out, you can get RHEL at no cost as an individual for whatever the heck you want to do from developer.redhat.com. Forget the word the developers in there. It's you do whatever. 16 instances, total access to all the RHEL content, including the knowledge base, the kernel live patching stuff, Red Hat Insights, the whole kit and caboodle.
Oh.
Get all the stuff. Give it a shot. Try it out for things like that. But CentOS gives you an on-ramp to that. And if you're on a RHEL place, CentOS gives you an opportunity to make RHEL better for you. And that is, I think, what makes CentOS a great choice.
That makes sense. I like the fact that it's a place where you can then contribute as well. Like there's some other contributions you can do if you have those skills and whatnot. And it's not just code. Docs, artwork, promotion, all that stuff. Like one of the new things that are coming out real soon, I don't know exactly the time frame, but it's being worked on, is that the RHEL documentation is also going to be open for contribution through CentOS as well. Oh, wow.
And so stuff like that you can also help improve. And that's going to be big because the RHEL documentation is freaking world class. Sometimes there's minor things here and there that could be better. Giving the ability for people to contribute to help make it better, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, that is. I'm glad they're doing that. I think that's an important. I think that's important. I think, especially documentation, it's about the only thing I have any thing I can contribute anyway. So, all right, well, very cool. I appreciate you coming here, Neal. Oh, Mark, you said you had something you wanted to say. Why CentOS Stream?
Oh no, Neal covered it. Yeah, I was going to say if you know that you need to learn and get experience with, because you're looking for a job in an enterprise, that they possibly are going to be using RHEL for production workloads, or government, or those types of things where you're going to be needing a FIPS compliant OS and such and they're most likely using RHEL. Then one way for you can get a developer license for Red Hat, but you can a lot easier get to CentOS and start playing with that. And again, that's binary compatible with all of Red Hat and all the packages. And again, you'll get familiar with the packaging and all of the things that you need to do with CentOS. And with the developer license, I think I can't remember if you have to download like the version that they give you at that time.
No. You can do whatever. Okay. Like if you have a RHEL ISO, when you run through the installer, you can then connect it to your Red Hat account that you create as part of RHEL developer subscription setup, and it will just entitle it just fine. You don't get weird like stamped blobs, because trust me, that's way too much work. It is a lot of work to generate individual specific image blobs that people have to download and use. Like it's not worth it. We're not Microsoft.
Right.
So anyways, that was all I was going to say, is that if you know you're going to be needing to work in that environment, use CentOS for that type of thing. And then if you're a developer, maybe you're using Fedora and you're just fine with it. Try CentOS as your server, right? So because it gives you that opportunity to then say, I need to deploy on a true server. And my pet peeve is people that don't work out their dependencies ahead of time, and they just say, oh, well, it ran on Fedora. No, you need to deploy it to a server base and make sure your dependencies are met there. And so that's where I would use CentOS.
Now, if you were developing for like server-based applications, would CentOS, like if you're going to develop for like the next version of RHEL or whatever, is that something else that you would use CentOS for, or not? Not really.
Yeah, I mean, that would be kind of the idea. Like right now, so the way that CentOS officially positions itself is that CentOS Stream shows you the next minor version of RHEL. So, for example, RHEL 9.2 is not out yet. Neither is RHEL 8.8. Those two, CentOS Stream 8 is effectively what RHEL 8.8 will look like, and CentOS Stream 9 is effectively what RHEL 9.2 will look like. With some minor quibbles, but basically that's what it is. Then, again, fast forward a year, and they branch Fedora 40 to create CentOS Stream 10. Well, CentOS Stream 10 would be essentially the preview of RHEL 10.0 as it is being developed. And so I think there's still value in you building your applications and being able to validate them on Fedora as well as on CentOS, depending on what kind of target you're going for. Are you going for the next major, or are you going for the next minor? But CentOS Stream has tremendous value for you as an application developer, as a systems integrator, as a sysadmin, like trying to make sure you get feedback and figure out what the heck's going on going forward. Like, one thing I recommend to anybody who's in the Red Hat ecosystem, have some of your systems running on CentOS Stream in production for real as canaries, because that can give you tremendous valuable feedback, especially if you're a Red Hat customer and you're using RHEL. You can catch issues before they happen. I have done this when I was a Red Hat customer. I have caught issues before they are going to go out to everyone else, and I have gotten them fixed ahead of time because I knew they were coming and I could point to it, and I gave them specific information, and sometimes I even provided the fix and got that going.
That's
and
cool.
So that's super valuable for everyone. Like, I don't know of an enterprise Linux right now that has something like that. openSUSE Leap doesn't function this way because essentially it's a one-to-one mapping between SLE and Leap. There's not really an opportunity to do canarying and getting ahead of the process, which I think is something that SUSE needs to add to make their platform more appealing for a larger set of Linux server admin types, especially in the DevOps world and all this other stuff that's been going on.
openSUSE Stream.
Yes.
So it's less of a ditch, more of a deluge, or whatever you. How did you describe it?
Well, it's like a lot of little, like a dry river with a bunch of ditches, and you're taking a pail and pouring water into each of the little ditches.
Yeah.
So we're filling the dry river with water now.
I got you. That makes sense. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Does anybody else have anything else they want to say about openSUSE, CentOS before I move on? CentOS Stream, I should say. Just some quick housekeeping. We have a Linux Saloon calendar. So if you go to linuxsaloon.com or cubicleinate.com/Linux Saloon, it's kind of like a page that has all that stuff, so you can get to a calendar, so you can add it. It's a Google Calendar, so I'm sorry if that offends anybody, but I don't have the time or the patience or the
I'm just happy it's not a Microsoft calendar
commitment. Well, you're welcome. I have to be able to use it in Contact, the K organizer. If it doesn't work with K organizer, it's a non-starter for me, because that's how I it's part of my daily, how I try and organize things.
And Google Calendar works.
So you can check that out, and we'll, when it's coming up. And if I have to shift the times left or right a little bit, then you'll see it right there. I'll change it in the calendar, because a calendar runs my life entirely, mostly. Maybe not some hours here and there. There's some white space, but anyway, I run by calendars. Well,
I live off of a calendar, so I know how you feel.
Yeah. If not, then I miss things, and sometimes I don't put things in the calendar, and then I drop the ball, and then I feel like garbage, and I want to try and avoid that guilt, I just try and avoid that whole guilty feeling about things.
If I'm actually feeling any better, Nate, there are 2 productivity things I use all the time: Google Calendar and Microsoft To Do. Okay. Absolutely brilliant. If I ever lose any of those apps, my life is shattered.
My life is shattered if I lose Google Calendar. I basically work off of it now. I can't function without it.
Yeah. It's nice having, like, when I do tasks, I have it on my phone will remind me, everything's all synchronized. It's quite nice. Next week, we have a news flight night. So if you have any news items that you would like to contribute, please do. You can send them to suggestions@linuxsaloon.com. Also, coming up the week after that, we have a application appetizer. So send your recommendations to suggestions@linuxsaloon.com, or you can hit me up on the Matrix or the Telegram, Discord. Discord's the hardest one for me. I want to like Discord, I really do, but I think it's the most cumbersome to use of all of them. So
you do have Matrix going again?
I have Matrix for me. I don't have so you can hit me up directly personally.
Okay, so yours is working.
Mine's working.
Okay.
So I got to do something with the Linux Saloon Matrix, because I have to figure that one out yet. I just didn't. I don't know, but I'm on Matrix.
I think you just have to rehome the room. That's all, because like the DL server is in disarray, so you just need to move it somewhere else.
I don't know how to do that. You're.
I can show you how to do it at some point. It's really not hard to do, because I did it for the pseudo show.
Okay. All right.
So I'm sending you a message on there just because the one I see says deprecated. That's what it was.
So it's cubicleNateMatrix.org or at cubicleNate:/matrix.org.
Yeah, I have it. It just, your name says deprecated, so
that's the Destination Linux one. So.
Oh. Okay, sorry.
All
right. After the show, I have to give you to.
All right. Good deal. But I'm CubicleNate everywhere, because only a buffoon would take that name. That's why. All right. Well, it is that time.
Yeah, future boy.
Well, future boy. Very sadly, my futureboy@DeLorean.net email is dead. Like there's only 2 people that were still using the DeLorean.net accounts, and I was contacted by them saying, we're shutting it down, even though we're taking your money for the last 10 years. We're gonna shut it down. So I'm like,
wow, yeah, rude.
Yeah, it is what it is. I meant I had like a week to transfer everything over to not futureboy@DeLorean.net that was still on there, and that took a while. All right, so it is closing time. I did have some news items, but tomorrow morning, I think Steve's very own is going to do his coffee clutch. I didn't see the notification, but I missed a lot of things. But
jeez, I hope not. Oh, I'm sorry.
So it's at 8 a.m. Central or 9 a.m. Eastern. Not sure what Pacific is, but you can probably do the translations from there.
Too early in the morning for Pacific. That's what.
I've seen actually Jill hop on in the mornings every once in a while. I don't know how she does it. Yeah.
But 8 a.m. Central means it's like what, 6 a.m. Pacific?
Maybe she had an insomniac
night.
I don't know. I can't tell you what's going on.
It's 7 a.m. But still, yeah.
But she might have
That's even worse. 5 a.m. is worse.
Well, he goes for a while, so it's not like it. She wasn't like first thing. I always try to get like first, but I seem to even miss it at that. Mark, you have a group of enthusiasts in Atlanta that are all about Linux. Is that true?
That's right. The Atlanta Linux enthusiasts. You can find us at ale.org. We meet every Sunday from 3 to 6 U.S. Eastern. And there's no set agenda. We want you to bring your Linux questions and we'll try to help you. There's usually a vast group of folks that have different experiences. And a lot of times we'll have people join and they're trying to get a certain driver working or they'll have various problems. We will get off topic and talk about open source and other things, but you're kind of supposed to manage your own questions and make sure you get the answer you need. But again, it's every Sunday. It's a valuable resource for you to, maybe not this week, but maybe next week you'll have a issue you need some help with. And you're welcome to join us. We do the online meetings through Jitsi. We're able to share screen and help people through their issues. And again, join us sometime.
It's a fun group for sure. A lot of knowledge on that enthusiast group that meets. And you've done something that your Jitsi instance always seems to work fine, at least anytime I've been there. So
yeah.
Good
We have a lot of folks that are they use different desktops. We got some folks that are very into MX Linux. We have some that have a lot of luck with Mint as being kind of a novice setup. And then we have some unique individuals that don't like GUIs at all, and they do everything from the command line. And when they need to run an app that's GUI, they just run it with X Windows from the command line. So
there you go.
A little bit of everything. So yeah, join us.
Linux User Space, their next episode is Endless OS. It's a distro history on deck. The episode will drop on March 13th. The next episode, though, is going to be going through the topics about Plasma, passwords, browsers, and feedback. That episode drops on February 27th. So check out Linux User Space, their next episode. And typically, the Tuesday after an episode drops, you can join them for a live stream on Twitch as they hash things out. So that's a lot of fun too. I'm part of a podcast called Linux Out Loud. We talked about unpopular tech opinions. So for instance, I said, I think OLED screens are garbage. And that's an unpopular tech opinion. So you can listen to that. That comes out this Wednesday. And you can tell me I'm wrong. I would enjoy that. Trying to get some feedback from people, I have a website called cubiclenate.com. I do things. And actually, I just released a video about the Steam Deck Project Kill Switch cover. So you can check that out if you like. So cubiclenate.com. Linux Saloon is part of the Tux Digital Network. Check out more great shows at tuxdigital.com. I want to thank you all for your support, however you do it, either being part of the conversation in both the Zoom meeting and the YouTube stream, as well as for everyone watching the show after the fact. I want to thank everyone involved in making the Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy technology. Linux truly puts personal back into personal computer. Thank you for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers, and please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yous. So a little bit about, well, I can pass it to you, Eric, if you would like to. A little bit about, first, I'm sorry. So I got a comment from, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Oh.
So I just realized why my configuration of CentOS, nothing's working. Is because SE Linux has been on enforcing the whole time. So I'm changing configs and it's putting it back.
What you would consider to be like.
So yeah, he cut
like
out.
Normal desktop things, you had to then extend it.
Yeah.
It's
a lot of times the
Zoom hates me, so.
For the fact, I want to thank you all. I'm having a hard time here.